Great. So you can fold the ends of your mat in to put extra support underneath your knees. You take your knees as wide as they go. No, I said as wide as they go. Just kidding. Big toes touching. You can even fold the mat underneath to give cushion. And then you maybe come forward onto your arms. And maybe just relax and take a little nap there. Now remember to breathe. To take a full breath now and just sigh it out. Today we're going to do a lung and gallbladder series. You can bring your hips further back so it's not frog. And take your first couple of breaths and just really check in and see how you're doing this morning. Notice your physical body. Notice your energetic body. Take a couple of breaths to just witness what you're feeling. And then observe your own thinking for a couple of breaths. And before we come out of this pose, just take a couple moments to set your intention for the next 60 minutes or for your day, or can it even be a lifetime intention? And then slide forward, moaning and groaning. Be careful of the radiator and a wall in front of you. But if you hit your head, your thighs probably wouldn't hurt so much. Wiggle around a little. Moan and groan. It's socially acceptable after a yin pose to sound. It doesn't have to be comprehensible. And then find your way onto your mat into Sphinx pose. So Sphinx pose is a very simple pose. I think I always like it because you can read in it. Take your legs as wide as the mat. Elbows just slightly in front of your shoulders. You can let your shoulders fall up into your ears, or pull your shoulders down your back. And because we want to make sure we get this whole comprehensive practice, let's add our little kissy faces yoga, face yoga poses to this. I said it. Inhale, slide your chin up about 45 degrees, reaching it up to your left, and then pucker your lips. Like you're so excited to kiss these walls good morning. Really efforting. Feel the stretch. And then bring yourself to the other side and pucker your lips to that side. You might find one side is easier, which should be a little disturbing. And then come back to center and raise your chin up and kiss the ceiling. Go, gadget lips. But efforting with your face actually increases the circulation in your face, the production of elastins, of collagen, and basically it makes the muscles in your face work better so you don't get as wrinkly. Beautiful. You guys are naturals. And then you can relax your face however you want. And it's actually more relaxing to smile than to grimace. And when you smile, you naturally flare your nostrils a little bit. So you take in more oxygen along with the air. And the oxygen actually makes you feel happy. So, I mean, if you're not into that, don't smile. But you'll find that even just starting, like even making the act of smiling on your face, like it affects you. And we know this if you're old enough to have watched Ally McBeal. Smile therapy. But it really is the same thing about our posture. Like if we walk around in the posture of a depressed person, I guarantee you're going to get depressed. Like when you let your shoulders slump forward, your chest drop away, looking at the ground. So if you're working on actually having a good attitude, work on your posture. One of the coolest feedbacks that I've learned in yoga, doesn't like mostly the vinyasa or whatever, is whenever I do an adjustment, a correction, if I made the right adjustment for the student, their eyes light up. It's the coolest thing. It's like getting this like, ding, you did it right. Like it's nice to get good feedback, right? But it's as if when we're in our uprightness and in our posture of strength and presence, we're able to shine out of this vehicle of us much better. Now, tuck your toes under. This is just a transition. Lift up into downward facing dog and stretch your right leg out. Yes, you can do it. And bring your right knee forward to your right wrist and open up your shin. So if you're flexible, you allow your shin to come as much parallel to the front of the mat as you can. You want your right knee a little bit to the right side of your right hip. And then you want to stretch your left leg behind you and look that your foot is stretching and not sickled. You might put something underneath your right hip if it's floating way above the ground. Some people like that support. Some people don't find it useful. So you kind of have to figure it out for yourself. And then walk your chest forward, coming into sleeping swan here. Try to feel that your weight is in the middle of your hips, not over to one side. And then you stretch your arms out as much as you can. So I want to share with you an inspiring quote from Iris van Herpen, who's this incredible designer, artist. And when she talks about her work, she talks about how exciting it is to collaborate with other people. Excuse me. Which for me is one of the real challenges in our world. People are being taught to be leaders, but we're not being actually taught how to collaborate well often, or how to follow out of strength instead of weakness. So when you collaborate, just by inviting another person, another creative force into the process, you're already inviting this element of chaos, of unknown. And she talks about her design, and she wasn't talking specifically about collaboration, but you can hear how that fits in. When I start my design, I don't want to know where it ends up. It's like looking for questions you can't answer yet. I don't want everything to come from logic. That feels too predictable. To me, it needs to come from the act, the movement of my hands, not from my mind. Now you're going to bring your hands underneath your shoulders. And you're going to keep your right knee where it is, and you're going to sweep your left leg around and see if you can stack one knee on top of the other. You might find that your top knee is way above your bottom knee. Make sounds, make noises, it's okay. And the first thing you want to do is feel that you can sit upright. So your foot isn't on the ground, it's like, yeah. You're exposing the bottom of your foot. Beautiful. So if I was like flying above you, when I look down, you'd have your knees stacked one right over the other. This pose in traditional yoga is called Gomukhasana, which is cow head, obviously. Yeah, or maybe it's just a cow pose. But it looks like a cow head. You know, here's the chin, here are the horns. All right, bow down. So you're going to roll down, and you're either going to bring your forehead to your knee, or you're going to bring your chin to your knee, or you're going to bring your chest to your knee, or you're going to think about touching something to your knee. So if it's too much and you feel like you have to break things, different class, but just stretch out your bottom leg and stack your left knee over your right knee still. Beautiful. And one of my lovely friends and teachers, Paul Grilly, he always talked about how he specifically pointed out, you know, middle-aged white guys, but I think it goes for anybody who's quite flexibly challenged. Now, I don't know what the right PC word is. Inflexible. That is, for people who aren't that flexible, their edge is right there. So that's where the practice is. So wherever your edge is, meet it with like, great, that's my edge. Instead of like, F this, I can't do this, man, man, man. Like that internal isn't going to help you. I've worked with quite a number of dancers, and often that opposite challenge is also really hard. Like how, you can't go so far in a pose. So some of the poses, like a lot of dancers don't actually feel. So this series works deeply into our hip area. And you can imagine, like, in our body, we actually like to store stuff we don't want to talk about. And the hip area is like the central storage space for that stuff. The stuff that's hard, the stuff you don't want to remember, the things you don't want to talk about. So as we meet our inflexibility and kind of try to soften into it, sometimes we'll have emotions that don't seem to fit right into the moment. Or you might even notice you have a memory come up that you're not sure why. And you want to allow those things to move through you. You can even imagine that, like, you have another opportunity to meet those feelings or memories in a different way. One of the most uniquely human traits is our creativity. And then roll up. And you're going to keep your legs as they are. And you're going to slide your left elbow out to the left-ish, your whole hand. And then drape your right arm over your ear, stretching all the intercostal muscles, the whole right side of your body here. You just want to not lose heart. Continue to breathe. So it's really easy to be like, oh, look, they're a painter, they're a sculptor, a dancer, a clown. Oh, they're so creative. We're very used to like spotting it in the arts. But every human being is creative. You might notice, I don't know if you've had the experience in your own life or your own biography, that sometimes you get creative with your memory. That you remember things that actually didn't really happen that way. Or you might get creative with how you hear something. And I find what's uniquely available to us is through our memory, we can actually think back on a situation and find another perspective than the one we've lived with for a long time.
Sorry.
Det är ungefär. I said weird things were going to come up. And then inhale, roll up. And you're just going to slide your left foot a little bit further forward so that your whole foot's on the ground. And you may find that you can fold your bottom knee here again. Maybe, maybe not. We're going to do a twist. So it's a traditional yang twist. So you want your foot on the ground if possible. And you want to feel eventually both your sit bones on the ground. Maybe not today. And then you're going to stretch your right arm up. And work on the obedience, blah, creativity, cool. It makes better things happen. And then twist away from your arm, letting your elbow be in front of your knee. Inhale, get tall in your spine. Exhale, twist, allowing your chin to come over your left shoulder. So just take a couple moments and just think about where are you most creative. And then bring your chin back around and bring your chin over your right shoulder, coming into the S twist. And then unwind. And shake out all your limbs. Woo, 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 woo. If you can. Lovely. Oh yeah, do. It really works out. And then cross your ankles, roll over your crossed ankles, and come into seal or sphinx. So, seal, you have your arms extended. Oh yeah. And sphinx, you have your elbows down. Now, we're a little bit entertainment oriented, so it makes us hard sometimes to choose sphinx because we just did it. But one of the practices our creativity can help us with is how we receive things. So, getting the same thing again. Okay, how can I receive it differently than I did last time? Or how can I meet it in a way that I don't just go, oh, that stinky old same thing. Instead I go, oh, okay, let me see what's there. You know, one of the ways of being creative is being able to meet other human beings. And instead of letting just your judgments stand in between you and them, if you create the space for them to be whoever they need to be, often that works out much better. You might notice that, if I've decided how someone else is, then I'm going to treat them like I think who they are. Or, if I think someone has the emotional capacity of a doormat, I'm not going to be very articulate about what I express to them or expect from them. And when that situation occurs, often they will respond just in the space you've given them. So I actually have to be creative in a way to get over my own judgments. to do something different than the other person's doing, not just to, mirror them. So, in the work of Charles Eisenstein, he's very articulate about changing our habit of separation. And that, he talks to this idea of, how can we make a paradigm shift without having casualties? So I want to read this quote by Shane Claiborne. Peacemaking doesn't mean passivity. It is the act of interrupting injustice without mirroring injustice. The act of disarming evil without destroying the evildoer. The act of finding a third way that is neither fight or flight, but the careful, arduous pursuit of reconciliation and justice. It is about a revolution of love that is big enough to set both the oppressed and the oppressor free. These are words from Shane Claiborne, and it's from I think it's a book titled Common Prayer, a liturgy for the common radical. The ordinary radical, sorry, same. But do you feel how that requires creativity? And then slowly lower down to the mat, moan and groan. And then bring your hands underneath your shoulders. And if you're feeling a little feisty, you can come up just into plank. It's a push-up. Yeah! And then bring your left knee forward. That's chaturanga, that can work too. So allow your left knee to be to the left of your left hip. Maybe putting something underneath your left buttocks if it's way off the ground, like bringing the earth up to you. You can use books, pillows. I like to say small animals, but they rarely stay still. And then walk your arms forward, stretch through your right toes so your foot isn't hooked. It's so amazing, when we look around, I want to say at the madness of the world, but we look at trends in education. Whenever there's a fear of scarcity, the first things to be cut are the arts. Which seems more and more ridiculous the closer we come to this age of artificial intelligence. Like how much of the stuff that we're occupying children's time with can actually be just looked up in a book or calculated with a machine. In this kind of scary picture of a future, of a mechanized future, of a future with even more computers, even more artificial intelligence, even more kind of control like that, wouldn't we want to raise our children to be more and more creative and human and, in a way, unpredictable? To operate out of heart instead of just mind. So you might recall I said we were going to be working on a liver and gallbladder series. It's like the most yang couple of the yin and yang couples of organs in the traditional Chinese medicine. And we can feel it when we hear the occult connections between the planets and those organs, where Jupiter is the planet connected to the liver, and Mars is connected to the gallbladder. Can you bring your foot more forward or something? You're letting your left hip come way up. Just a thought. You could also try bringing your left knee more into the center line. A little bit. Yeah. And then sliding forward. So if we know any of the mythology around Jupiter and Mars, or the god Ares, we recognize kind of this very kind of masculine force in these organs. Jupiter is often connected to the archetype of the wise teacher, or the kind and wise king. And while Ares, or Mars, is often connected to the god of war. When our liver and gallbladder are doing well and the meridians connected to them are doing well, I wanted to joke that you're probably not alive at this time. But when they're healthy, what they support in our being is our ability to be kind, to be have equanimity, so to meet people fairly, decision-making, and creativity. And when those organs are out of balance, energetically or diseased, what occurs in us on the psycho-emotional front is that we struggle with anger, indecisiveness, an inability to be to plan. And it's not just anger that expresses itself in rage, but it's also an inability to express anger. Now inhale, lift up your chest, sweep your beautiful right leg around, moaning and groaning. Feelings, they're weird. So bring your right knee over your left knee, even if you have to extend your left leg to make that happen. Now take your hands right next to your hips and just slide. It's like sliding your butt cheeks back And what this does is a little tilt of your pelvis. That face was totally appropriate, Miriam. Like, what? It's a very little move, but it's really just tilting your pelvis. And then from there, bow forward, bringing your forehead to your knee, your chin to your knee, or your chest to your knee. You can also straighten out your left leg if you need to. And it's not, it's just honoring where you're at. You might notice, I don't know, what is liver in Portuguese or Spanish?
Is it the heat?
I don't know, the liver, the one we damaged when we drank.
Sorry?
The liver, the organ, the one that we damage when we drink.
Fígado.
Okay, does that mean live? Nay. Huh. In a lot of languages, apparently not Portuguese, the liver has been given this word of the verb to live. So in German and Dutch and Swedish, all of those variants in between, probably even in Luxembourg. So it's already in Western culture, it's also given this kind of high place. In traditional Chinese medicine, it's often called the general of the army. Oh, yes. Makes sense. But this act of living is attributed to the liver. And part of why that is, according to traditional Chinese medicine, is that the liver houses our non-corporeal soul. So that's a fancy way of saying our soul without a body. So in the lungs, in traditional Chinese medicine, we house our po, which is our corporeal soul, the soul that dies with our body. But the liver has a non-corporeal soul, and the picture is the liver houses this part of us that after we die returns to maybe the spirit world, in between places. And then when we're born again, that is the part of us that is us in a new life, in a new personality, in a new body. All right, inhale up. Keep your legs like that. And you're going to stretch up with your left arm. And you're going to slide your right arm out to the right, and you're going to drape your left arm over your head, over your ear. You can start by making some faces. That's totally fine. Feel the stretch in between your ribs, over your hip. In anthroposophy, the liver is attributed to being the most modern organ that we have. And that's a kind of interesting concept. Because, in our understanding of the human being, of course we can't live without a liver. So how would it be any more modern than my lungs and my heart? So I take it with a grain of salt. But what's cool about the liver is that it's the organ that's designed for the future. Meaning, it actually, we should base our education more on the liver than on a computer. Because the liver is given the job of protecting our body and our being from unknown forces or unknown molecules. So every substance that was unknown to the human being when the human beings were created, the liver is like kind of designed to deal with all the new stuff that's going to happen in the future. It's also interesting because you can lose, I think, something 2/3 of your liver and it will grow back. And it also really mirrors what the planet Jupiter does for the Earth. So inhale up, and then slide your right foot forward so you can put the whole of the bottom of your right foot on the ground. Feel the sit bones on the ground. And then stretch up your left arm. Turn it away from your arm. Hook your elbow to the outside of your right knee. Inhale, get tall. Exhale, twist. Bring your chin all the way over your left shoulder. Sorry, that's your right shoulder. The left shoulder comes later, Karan. My bad. So Jupiter is one of the protectors of the Earth. It has an amazing gravitational force, and so it pulls things to it. And if it wasn't for Jupiter, Earth would be bombarded with like meteors and basically intergalactic debris. Space trash would be pummeling the Earth all the time. It would change our weather, probably life expectations. It would change a lot. But because of the force of Jupiter, we don't notice this. We don't feel it. We don't realize. Because we never realize what we're protected from. You don't know how often the forces that are invisible have saved your life or protected you from some hurt. It's a little bit like women's work. When you do it right, like old-fashioned women's work, I am kind of sexist, but that's a different story. But when you mend a shirt, if you do it properly, you don't notice what you did. Or if you clean a house, you can come in and be like, oh, your house is so clean. But generally, people just don't notice. They would notice if it was really dirty. Bring your chin over your left shoulder. You guys are so gorgeous. And then release. And maybe just shake out your legs. Notice you can move them. Or can you move them? A little bit, a little bit. That's a good one. Yeah. All right. Bring your feet together into butterfly. Make sure you have room to lean back. You want about 2 hands length between your heels and your groin. And then you're going to come back onto your elbows. And if it's okay for your neck, you're going to drop your head back. If it irritates your neck too much, you can bring your chin to your chest. So one of the kind of complaints of our modern age is that when a human being or a child receives too much of like screen time and images and stories presented to them as being done and finished, it actually doesn't encourage them to practice their creativity. So I don't know if you remember when you were a child listening to stories. It was one of my favorite things to do. My dad reading to me. So like that was like the part, like that was my favorite part about being sick. You know, you might feel horrible, but then you'd be lying on the couch and dad would like read you a story. And when we hear stories, or even if I were to tell you about a friend of mine, we build up kind of an image in our head. And we have this imaginal like realm kind of open up in us when another person tells a story. And children especially, you can see them play and make up stories about, you know, I don't know, the soup spoon, or, you know, a whole world that lives underneath a table. And this capacity is something that we want to foster and help grow in all humans, because it's this capacity that really allows us to look at the world and not get overwhelmed by the problems in it. That we can imagine that there are solutions we haven't yet thought of for the problems that we're faced with today. Our imagination is such that different from fantasy, it can connect to other humans, to our history, to the earth. In fantasy, the difference being that we just escape into a made-up world instead of work with the world that is formed. Allow your upper body to relax down to the ground, and keeping your feet like that, you're going to take your hands into a mudra, a yoga posture for your hands. You want your thumbs and your index fingers touching, and today we're going to slide our thumbs down just to stop where our head and the earth meet. So you don't have to lift up your head unless you have an elaborate hairdo. And you want your thumbs and index fingers touching and the other 3 fingers on your hands spreading out. So you'll find that creativity really comes to life between things. So in school, I had a sculpture class. It was really challenging, humbling. And at first, it seemed like an insurmountable task, really, really hard. Because we got assignments such as create something using just school glue or white glue, wire, and toilet paper. And you go, oh, I feel so limited. But it's really often exactly in those moments that we get most creative. When we've been given clear, like, okay, these are your requirements, or these are the boundaries. We're asked to fit within something. But even with the few rules you're given, there's so many that you're not given. So often your creativity will come to light. And this is kind of part of where our imagination becomes a force in us. When we meet a stranger, what do we do? Do we imagine them as bad or good? What's our go-to? And then see how you meet the limitations you've set for yourself. How can we interrupt injustice without mirroring injustice? A love that is big enough to set both the oppressed and the oppressor free. Stretch your legs long. Cover yourself. Taking a little bit of a wide shavasana, like letting your feet be as wide as the mat. Nearly like you're about to make a snow angel or a sand angel. Palms open to receive. Eyes covered with your eyelids or something else if you don't like to keep them closed. Feel the ground hold you, and instead of drifting to sleep, practice being present and feel your body. Be aware of the room. With your next inhale, bring your awareness to the edges of your body. Maybe wiggle your fingers and your toes. Smile a bunch. And then roll over onto your left-hand side, hugging your knees to your chest. Feeling your vibrancy and your vitality. You're amazing. And help yourself up into a comfortable seated position. Allow your hands to meet at heart center. Feel the earth below you and feel by pushing down to it you find the lightness within to lift up tall. Let's close with an Om. Empty your breath. Take a deep inhale. Bring your prayer hands to your third eye. Invite the divine light. And bowing to this one unique, special day, let's bow forward and together we say, Namaste. And then make some noise. And go out there and be awesome. 'Cause the world needs you.